time's knocking upon your front door.
And my microphone is off. So that's our first thing. So, hi. What I was saying was this is day 3 of using our new broadcast studio, EV Mux. I just heard what that even is or how to pronounce it yesterday. And it's really, really cool. So if you are out there and you're podcasting or you're doing live streams, check out EV Mux. It's been we transitioned from StreamYard. I used StreamYard for 5 years. This is day 3 of EV Mux. And they've got some really cool like preset things, and you can upload videos and automatically go to a different scene. So if I screw anything up today like that, I apologize in advance, but I think we'll get through it. And we have a really good show. So this is episode 206. Can you believe it? We've done 205 episodes of Make Your Day Richer. Today is 206. And let's see how many views we've had in 205 episodes, shall we? And then hopefully, when this video is done, it automatically comes back here. We'll see what happens. $333,975 views of the show. Thank you so much to everybody who watches the show, who listens, who shares, all the guests that come on, everybody. And now is a really good time to just share the show. Wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, just click that share button, would you? And I mean, we'll definitely be 334,000 by tomorrow. Let's see if we can get 335, shall we? Fingers crossed. It is very exciting. It's National Peanut Butter and Jelly Day. And as you may or may not know, I love peanut butter. And I want to show you my favorite peanut butter, which is naked peanut butter. If I had a camera operator, we would zoom in, but we don't. This is naked peanut butter. You can get it, wherever you order stuff or go shopping or on their website. Or you can go to my website, makeyourdayricher.com/shop and order it there. It's really good. And this is 2 pounds of just ground peanuts. There's no sugar. There's no salt, no nothing. It's just peanuts. So you get to make whatever you want. Great in shakes, great making peanut butter. Oh, it's literally my favorite. I probably go through one of these, maybe 2 a month, but that's a different story. Okay. Outside of this show, I don't know if you know this or not, but I help other podcasters produce and edit their shows. And Before You Go is a podcast from a nonprofit in San Antonio called Abode, and they house people at the last months of their lives. And so this podcast is all about death. It's all about dying. It's about preparing for death and doing it with dignity and oftentimes fun. Did you know you can have fun in your last moments of life? Anyway, they have a new podcast episode out this week. Wherever you get your podcast, it's on YouTube. Take a look at this clip. And then again, hopefully we'll come back. And if this goes right, there will be a graphic at the bottom of the screen. Fingers crossed.
It changed me for a while because there's a husband and a son with special needs, and his dad was taking care of him. I think the mom had just passed away maybe right before COVID. And so just a lot of emotions. And I remember being there because they had COVID. And I remember being there with my laptop, letting the family members talk to them. And it was kind of like at the end of life, right? Those times where you couldn't be with the family members. And I just remember like being a part of that moment with that family and me being the central piece that bonded them together. And like, you couldn't help but cry. You couldn't help but get emotional because like they wasn't given the opportunity to have the last rites of peace that they were granted for by gifted by what God gives us, right? By who we are.
It's a beautiful, beautiful podcast. It's a great nonprofit in San Antonio that you should check out. You can go to abodehome.org to learn more about Natalie, learn more about Abode, learn more about the podcast. And if you need help with your podcast, you can go to or send me an email, makeyourdayrricher@gmail.com, and I'll gladly help you out. Let me know. Okay, I think that's it. I think we should start the show because we have good guests. And so I should shut up because we all remember the momentous experience of leaving home for college. It's a time filled with excitement and uncertainty. My first guest has captured that pivotal moment in her new young adult novel, By the Way, I Love You. Susan Miller, a clinical psychologist and writer, tells the story of Leslie as she arrives at university, makes new friends, faces challenges, and ultimately learns to find her own voice and protect what she loves. Great, great book. Take a look and please welcome Susan Miller. Susan, thank you so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here because I love people who, I love all creator people, but I love people who have like real serious jobs and then they also have this creative side that just has to come out and they have to make art with it, and that's what you've done with your new book, By the Way, I Love You. Also, I love you, by the way.
Thank you.
Which I'm sure you hear all the time. Tell everybody about the book.
This is the first young adult novel I've written. I've written a couple of novels for older audiences, but this one, actually, I wasn't positive who the audience should be, but I presented it to the editor after it was done, and she said to me, "Okay, what questions do you have for me when I read it?" And I'm like, who's the audience? Is this a young adult book? And so she did come back and she said, yeah, it's a young adult book, which was kind of my suspicion. But I have written for that age group before. I had written not a novel, but a self-help book called When Parents Have Problems, that was speaking to teenagers and older kids, maybe young adults who have a troubled parent who they're trying to cope with and grow up well despite that. So I think I've been drawn to that age group. And even when I've written for older folks, I've tended to have some central characters who were young adults. But this is the first novel where there's a young adult or multiple young adults at the center, the characters, and then also the intended audience is for young people. So, but it's basically about 18-year-old who is leaving home for the first time. She happens to be going to a Midwestern university, but I was thinking of her as just someone who's leaving home. Could be someone going to the military or just leaving their home for another community, and thinking about the things people face as they're trying to build a new world for themselves, but also taking along things in their sort of psychological bags are packed with some things from their past. So she has particular challenges that she's bringing along with her.
I think that's so interesting that you wrote the book and then said, who is this for? I guess when I think about authors writing, because I've never written a book, so I don't know. I always thought like they thought I'm going to write a book for X or about for this type of person. But that's so interesting that you were like, I need to get this story out, but I don't know who it's for yet.
Well, and what you're describing might be the more typical process, but in this case, for some reason, I was not entirely sure.
Where did the idea for this book come from?
This particular book started, since I do wear two hats, and the other hat is the psychologist hat. So it started from that part of my life. A number of years ago, somebody that I was working with happened to be a young man, although at the center of the book, it's now a young woman who was having a lot of trouble just adjusting to life away from home. And in his background was the early loss of his mother. and he really was not thinking in any conscious way about his mother, as he was struggling with life, but you could just see the fingerprints all over the place of that early loss. So that was where this book started, and the main character, Leslie, has lost her mother. She's a little more conscious of some of the impact, not all of it, but she's struggling with a number of aspects of both the loss and also some deep questions she has about the relationship she had with her mother over the years, and then how the relationship ended. So she's carrying a lot with her that she has to work out in the present day, and it enters into her new friendships and even a
Mhm.
new environmental justice ish sort of passion that she develops. The mother's even in there, so that loss is intertwined with her story.
I think this is such an important book because I was just saying this on this show the other day that like we turn 18 and then we're expected to know what we want to do with the rest of our lives. And and then I grew up in a very small town in Wisconsin, went to the big city of Milwaukee for college,
Hmm.
and it's very scary to
Yeah.
leave everything, and there's grief and there's excitement and there's all this stuff going around that, but no one's really talking about it.
Yeah, it is, I think, a pretty monumental transition for people.
Yeah.
Again, whether it's college or it might be something else, might be the military or just a
Mhm.
different community, but it is a huge upheaval. And boy, there's a lot that happens
Yeah.
developmentally, and sometimes things go off track.
I feel like you're
That's why
talking
we
about my
need
personal story, Susan.
that's why we need psychologists at the
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah. I know you've written books on psychology too. What made you start writing fiction books? Have you
Uh,
always like loved writing?
yeah, I have since I was a kid, and I started like most kids, you don't start writing an essay, you start with a story, right? So I started with fiction and actually was really interested in fiction writing long before I was interested in psychology, and I didn't even know what psychology was, other than that it scared me. It was that counselor in the middle
Mhm.
school that you didn't want to be sent to. That's all I knew about it, pretty much.
You didn't want to meet one. Yeah.
Mostly bad things, yeah. But fiction I was interested in one way or another from a young age. And teachers played a role, an important role, I'd say, for me in developing that interest,
I love that.
sparking it and developing it. So thanks to all the
Yeah.
teachers out there.
Thanks everyone.
Who
Yes.
yeah, who I sometimes do think about the teachers who had a big effect on you and they have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, they might have a general sense that they are important to kids, but may not know which kid, they
Mhm.
actually touch.
How much they actually touched. Yeah. Yeah. I have teachers like that growing up too. And thanks to Facebook, you get to be friends with them on Facebook, and they get to watch you, and it's very interesting to see your teachers
Yeah,
also grow up into like adults as well, and you start to, kind of get on common ground with
right.
them.
That's
It's
nice. I
very
think that's a
yeah.
newer experience, back in
Mhm.
my day, probably not too much of that happened
Yeah.
because no
Yeah.
internet.
No Facebook. I want to talk about the cover of your book because it's so almost like beautifully haunting, kind of.
Yeah, I it does have a kind of a haunting quality. The publisher and I had some conversations, and I had mentioned certain elements from the story that like that I might like to see in the cover, and also a little bit of uh, commentary about style. But so on the cover, there's an image of a person. You really can't, I don't think, tell anything about gender, in a
Mhm.
hoodie, and there is an important hoodie in the story. So that's a tie, but I think also the hoodie worked for me because the person is in a somewhat protected space, right? The hood is
Mhm.
up and the color is dark, and so there's a little of a sense of needing the protection of that garment, which also speaks to who the character is at the beginning. And then the other element in the cover is that there's things growing out from inside the garment, like flowers and little branches and tendrils, and that picks up on the environmental theme that develops in the maybe the second half of the book. So and speaks to some of the things that are in a sense inside this character as she gets to know herself better and as the reader would get to know her too.
Can you tell Susan's a psychologist by the way she has figured out the cover of this book? It's so beautiful, though. When I was first looking at like your stuff, I was so drawn to that cover. So
Oh,
pretty.
nice to hear. Yeah.
What number book is this for you?
This is the eighth book that I've published. There are other
Mm.
books unpublished, but
In the
this is the
vault.
eighth book that is published.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a
Are you gonna? Oh yeah.
few unpublished novels and some picture books for little kids. So there's some other things.
How
Yeah,
come they're
in the
not
vault.
published? What makes you
Um,
decide to publish or
um,
not publish?
a variety of reasons. One was a very difficult, dark subject matter. The agent I had at the time was horrified by it. I thought that might be a good sign because if you have that much
Yeah.
emotional impact, she told me you've created five of the most despicable characters in
Wow.
Western literature. And I thought, oh, wow, that's a good
I'm
thing.
onto
But
something.
okay,
Yeah.
that one's unpublished. Yeah. Um, there was another one that somebody told me maybe I would have a fatwa put on my on me if I
Oh
published
my
it,
gosh.
which I thought was a little over the top, but that one could still get published. So, a variety of reasons. So some may get
Okay.
published, some may not.
Yeah. Are you working on anything now?
I am working on a novel now, so usually working on something. Might be a fast pace or a very slow pace, but there's
Mhm.
usually something, that I'm thinking about.
That's yeah, that's what I've learned from all the authors on this show. It either takes them a week to write a book or it takes them 3 years, and there's like
It,
no in between.
or or 10
Yeah.
years it might be. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I had someone on here, it took her like 25 years to finally like finish the book on and off,
Wow.
which is
Yeah.
insane. Yeah. What do you love most about your life right now?
I do like the balance, the variety of activities and the balance and enough time to relax and just enjoy day-to-day life. So seems like I like that.
Good. And what's the best way that people can support you and follow you and connect with you?
I do have a website, susanbethmiller.com.
Well, I hope you come back when the next book comes out,
Thank you. I would love to.
whenever that is.
Yeah.
I'll be here. Thank you so much for being
Okay.
here.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the book is called By the Way I Love You. Susan Miller is the author. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back after this. Don't go away. Life is difficult. Are you feeling overwhelmed or like you could use a little support for your mental well being? Visit the Help Hub. It's the most comprehensive and inclusive free online destination for mental health resources, helpful tools, crisis hotlines, and supportive content. Just go to thehelphub.co to find the resources you need when you need them most. Unlike other resource pages, the Help Hub is divided into 16 different categories, ensuring that everyone in every community has access to the resources and support that matches their unique needs. Find the help you're looking for at thehelphub.co. Is it the right thing? Okay, it is. Are you feeling a calling for something more in your life? My next guest is a guiding light for women navigating deep spiritual change. Sylvia Worsham is a 3-time best-selling author and a spiritual transformation coach who empowers corporate and professional women to uncover their soul's purpose and align with their true identity. Please say hello to Sylvia Worsham.
Hi, guys.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing beautiful here in Austin, Texas.
Oh, you're in Austin. I lived in San Antonio for like 7 years.
Awesome. I love San Antonio too, but San Antonio reminds me more of my hometown in South Texas. It's a bigger San Antonio.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Yeah. Is it? I'm assuming. I mean, it's warm here. I'm now in South Carolina, and it's warm here. I'm assuming you're now probably in summer in some aspects.
Texas, it really doesn't have seasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's rare.
Yes. Yes. That's what I learned very quickly there. I want to. I mean, you have so much to talk about. Your podcast, your books, but I want to talk about the medical complication. Did that? What happened? And did that like snowball your entire like a totally new life for you?
Yes and no. And I'll get to why the no in a minute.
Okay.
But the medical complication occurred in 2012. I was dating who would now become my second husband. And I had a young son, and he invited us over Easter weekend to go to Louisiana. And I lived in South Texas. So I hopped on a plane. And when I landed, I started to feel a pain. Well, I had started to feel the pain prior, called my brother, who's a doctor, and he said, oh, it's, pleurisy. And that's basically the inflammation of the lining of the lung. The problem is it mimics pulmonary embolisms to a T. And I didn't know it at the time when I took the flight that I already had pulmonary embolisms. So
Oh my gosh.
I arrive and I'm pale and I can't even lean down to grab my bag, and I slowly walk out and he takes one look at me and says, you know what, instead of driving overnight to Louisiana from Houston, we're just spend the night. And we do. And in the middle of the night, I get jolted out of bed and it feels like 50 knives are piercing my chest every time I take a breath. But see, in those moments, I don't know it's pulmonary embolism. And so I hear this prompting that just says, lean forward and you'll be able to breathe. And so I lean forward for like 4 hours and I'm able to take deeper breaths. And next to me is my son, my young son. He was only 6 at the time. And my boyfriend's like in another room. And I don't call anybody because my brother had told me it was going to be very painful. So I just
You were
take
prepared.
the pain. It's crazy. And I wake up the next morning. I call my brother. I'm like, somewhere deep inside of me, intuitively, I knew something was up. And I call him and I go, hey, I don't think this is what you described to me because the pain is like atrocious. He didn't realize I had taken a flight from South Texas to Houston. And he goes, drop everything and go to the ER like stat, like right now. I'm like, okay. And so we arrive at St. Luke's Episcopal Hospital, which is among the best in the country for what I had, and walk in and they say, okay, what's your, pain? And I'm like, if there's anything above 10, I'd like to say yes, above 10. They rush me in, they do a scan, and a specialist walks into my ER room and says, a woman in your condition should not be sitting up talking to me. Last night, that pain you felt, those were 2 blood clots that had passed through your heart, and they landed in your left lung, and they were
Oh my God.
And he goes, you should have died last night. So that's miracle 1, right? So I'm like, wow. He goes, and something's up with your liver. So you're not leaving here till like maybe Tuesday, and it's Good Friday. And my son's out there with my boyfriend who he's only met twice in his life.
Gosh.
So that's bad. And I'm not from there. So long story short, the next day they do a scan of my abdomen to check out the liver, and I get 6 doctors in my hospital room. And I was in sales at the time. I worked for Pfizer in corporate, and I could tell right away something was deadly wrong. And they said, we've discussed it with your family. They're all doctors, by the way. And we're going to try this non-traditional route we're going to give you this thing that's going to destroy whatever clots are in there. Because right now you have a massive blood clot in your main vein that takes blood out of your main organs, and it's clotting almost all of it, and it's putting pressure on your liver. So you're about to go into acute liver failure. And do you see the 3 doctors on your right? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, that's the liver transplant team. Go on your case now. Like, I'm sitting there, I'm 37 years old. I'm in the prime of my life, and I am facing this huge medical complication, which, by the way, my father later explained to me was carried an 80% chance of dying.
Oh
So
my
my odds
gosh.
were bad, really bad. And in that moment, I just went into full surrender into God's
Yeah.
hands, because I knew that science was only going to go so far, and then there was something beyond me that was going to save me if I was going to be saved. And so the next day, a woman with the Catholic diocese walks in. At this point, it's Easter Sunday morning, and she goes, "Do you want to pray?" And I wanted to, because I needed a miracle. If that therapy they had given me didn't work, they had to go the interventional route, and they had already explained to me, you'll likely die on the table. You're in that much of critical stage. So we've joined a circle, my boyfriend, the lady, and I, and in the part in the Lord's Prayer that says, "Thy will be done," I felt this love that was so immense, just enveloped the entire room, and it felt like God was cradling me in his loving arms, and a peace washed over me, and a knowing that I had been saved, that I'd been granted a second chance at life. And she leaves the room, and my boyfriend turns to me and he says, "You felt them too, didn't you?" And I couldn't even speak. It was so profound. They wheel me in to kind of take a look at it, and the doctor comes out. He's beaming, which I'd never seen a doctor look so joyful in my whole life. And he goes, "I cannot believe this." He goes, "There is no evidence of disease inside your body at all. And on top of that, you have no long-term complications, which you should have. The size of the pulmonary embolisms in my left lung were so large, they should have left scarring. And I should have had long-term complications for the rest of my life. There was no scarring, nothing." And it was the most beautiful moment of my life, because I had received 3 miracles in 72 hours. And so something like that's going to wake you up.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
fast. And, I came from a highly stressful job. I was in hospital sales. I had $1 million accounts, day in, day out, just stress, go, 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 go. High performer, multiple award winner with Pfizer. And it just came to a halting screech, and I felt this, this need, this pull. What is your purpose in life? Because I don't think this is it. And I think it's what God used, this change, to kind of shift my lens into the life I was meant to lead. But it's not such a wake up call that you stop doing what you've been doing all your life. That's not as quick of a turnaround. It should be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not,
But it
because
puts it in motion, right? Like yeah.
yeah, it puts it in motion. But then comes in, like, you had the psychologist just before me, fears and doubts and what ifs, and
Yeah.
is this the right path? And this constant, like, ruminating in your mind, and it stops you from actually taking action in a much quicker route, right? So, I mean, it took me, let's say, that happened in 2012. I retired from medical sales when I married my boyfriend, moved to Austin. And then 3 more years passed by until I finally had a prompting that said, you need to call Bridget, who had been my mentor at the John Maxwell team, and you need to become a coach, speaker, and trainer. And that was in 2017. So there's like a 5-year gap between the 3 miracles and the time I step into my second act.
Were you healthy up until that moment?
Like
Like,
oh
did you
yeah,
have any?
like I was exercising 7 days a week. I was in the prime of my life and size and everything. But I made a very interesting choice. I was dating and I didn't want to get pregnant. So I restarted taking birth control pills, and I was over the age of 35. And that slight medical complication, like, was that slight little statistic that they show, like, if you take birth control pills over the age of 35, you can have pulmonary embolisms. Why was that small incident? So I became the medical complication. And the irony is that I worked in pharmaceuticals at the time. And I would talk about these medical complications that can occur when you take certain medications. And I became that. So I find it interesting how God used that lovely choice to say, okay, if you won't listen to me in other ways, I need to wake you up. And I need you to understand you're not on the right path.
Sylvia, that happened. I wasn't on birth control, but the same thing sort of happened to me around the same time 2 years ago. And I ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks and had no idea. And the doctors were coming in and they would say, we don't know yet. We don't know yet. And I thought, I'm going to die in here. Like, I mean, how long can I do this? And I had what they at first thought was some sort of bacterial infection. And I ended up with a fungal infection all over. And I had 4 surgeries but they couldn't figure it out. And and it was that wake up call. And I think it was God saying, like, if you're not going to take my small hints, then I'm going to make you stop and sit there and think about what you should be doing. And it changed. It was like the Wizard of Oz, from black and white to Technicolor.
Yes.
But some of us need that because we're not good at listening. But it sounds like now, like, what have you learned over those last couple of years about listening to yourself and about trusting yourself?
That when I trust him, when I trust God, he leads me to my joy every time.
Yeah.
And he's never left me. I'm the one that abandoned him. I'm the one that turned away for years because I confused him and his essence with the hypocrisy I experienced in people that I called religious. And so that's why I always tell my husband, and I always correct him when he says, well, you're religious. I said, no, I'm not religious. I'm faith-based because my faith is very different. I have a relationship with him and I trust him. And I lay everything at his feet. Even when I get overwhelmed with life, especially when I get overwhelmed, I turn to him because he has shown me. And that was the first instance, with total surrender. The value of surrender is that when you do it, he comes through for you in a way that you never imagined. And I mean, what people deemed impossible became possible when I laid it at his feet. And it's happened to me throughout my life. And that's what led me to write the first edition, Journey to Me, which was published in 2021. It was self-published. And then came the prompting in 2023. You need to do the second edition of that because the voice of it originally was done in fear. And the second edition was done in Faith I Thrive, is the title of that edition, was written in 3 voices. Fear, the first 6 chapters. In the second 6 chapters, you have joy take center stage. And then ultimately, it was this total surrender piece at the end. And you see this transformation occur in my life where fear just no longer has that power over me, right? That doubt doesn't really take center stage anymore. And I started operating from a space of total surrender to him. And it actually helped me deal with my father passing away last year. I didn't know how I was going to react to that. That fear before things happen. And I just laid it at his feet and I just talked to him daily about it. And when the time came, I was able, it was not a good feeling to see my father pass away, but it didn't drown me in that grief that people often talk about. And it's because my faith helped me thrive. And that's why I titled the book, In Faith I Thrive. because it has been the centerpiece of why and how I do things in my life and why I feel such peace within.
I mean, we could just stop this whole thing right there, or I could just talk to you for like 4 hours because it's so amazing. What did you want to be when you were a kid, when you grew up?
I had several ideas. I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Of course, yes.
I think Indiana Jones had a lot to do with that. I wanted to be a marine biologist, but then my fear of sharks kind of got in the way of that one. Um, and then I also wanted to be an author, which was interesting because I did have a teacher. You know how your first guest talked about those teachers that impact your life. One of my teachers was showcased in Faith I Thrive. She was in chapter 3, Jan Johnson. She was in high school, and she really helped me develop my writing back then. And my mother was also instrumental, and still is to this day, of kind of guiding me towards becoming an author. So I find it interesting that I landed as an author eventually, right?
Yeah,
It took a couple
yeah.
of years.
You
and a
gotta try
couple
other
of
things first and then
miracles
figure
along
out
the
what you
way.
actually should be doing. Yes, that's usually how that works. Are you writing anything new now? What are you working on now?
Actually, I'm working on promoting in Faith I Thrive because I think that when you release books, you can't just leave them out there kind of doing their own thing. You kind of have to be out there pushing it a little bit because there's so much noise in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd rather have that kind of noise where I'm kind of guiding you to step into your joy and light and fulfillment.
Yeah.
Because my whole point of being, and one of the greatest gifts I have, is to guide women and men too, because my husband was like, hey, men need help too,
You need help, yes. 100%, yes.
Help them step into their divine purpose, into those gifts that God gave them when they were first born. But then life happens and layers start to, cloud your light within. And so my job, as God has explained it to me, is to guide them, one, towards Him so that He can guide them into their light and step fully into those gifts He's given them from the beginning. Because these things are, when we really step into our roles and into our purpose every single day, the world really works better. It's not as hard.
Yeah.
Than when you're going against the current and the stream, because that's really not where you're supposed to be. And I
have
found
had
that, like in
goosebumps your
corporate.
entire interview. Like, you are giving me goosebumps. If you could, if we had a camera operator, you could see my eyes watering. Like, you are here today, especially when you're supposed to be, because there's a lot happening. This is not my coaching session, but this is perfect. This is perfect. I think so many people go through this, with or without all of the history of medical stuff. Like, so many people suffer with that of like, I want to be doing this, but I have to be doing this, or I need to, and finding what you're supposed to be doing is just something so outstanding and miraculous. Like, when you can breathe like that, like, it's such a sigh of relief. I went through the same thing, like, figured out this is what I should be doing, and the calmness that comes over you when you figure that out, and then you listen to it. I don't know.
I totally agree with that. Usually before a prompting comes through for me, I feel the urgency from the soul. The soul keeps pulling me and pulling me. And it's discerning, is that my mind or is that my heart, soul, right? Because the ego is not the issue, because the ego is your self-image. The issue is the motivation behind the choices that you're making. If the motivation is fear, that's what needs to shift. Because it really needs to start, like, the motivation, when you're totally in alignment with your ego, soul, and spirit, it's from a space of love. And I know that sounds woo-woo for a lot of people, but the truth is this: fear only leads you towards scarcity when you're using it inappropriately, right? So there's appropriate uses of fear, like when somebody is like, something's off and your intuition kicks in. That's a good use of fear. But when it's not, then you're allowing fear to guide you into a space of scarcity and not joy and fulfillment.
Yeah.
Because outside of you, we always, at least in the United States, and I lived abroad, and I'm of Mexican heritage, so I've been abroad most of my life, but I've noticed that here in the United States, the more you do, and I'm saying that very specifically, the more you think you're going to be successful,
Mm-hmm.
versus in other countries, it's who you surround yourself with and how you are. The being versus the doing. And that's the being is what leads you to joy and fulfillment, being in alignment with spirit, being in alignment with your soul's desires. That is what truly gives you that happiness and that fulfillment that everybody seeks. But we mistake it because of all of the noise outside that tells us that success means achieving everything, to the to-do lists and
Mm-hmm.
the material things, and all of that doesn't matter when you pass away. None of that
Yeah.
matters.
Yeah.
And I've seen it. Like, I saw my father was one of those. I love my daddy very much, but he was always about doing instead of being. And when he had his medical complication, which I detailed in chapter 5 of In Faith I Thrive, God used that opportunity for him to slow down and actually get to know his family, because he was just doing. He was a surgeon, and he loved it, but he didn't know anything outside of that.
Yeah.
And you miss out on life and love, when you just stay go, 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 achieve, achieve, achieve. And at the end of it, you don't really find the happiness you're looking for. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
want that for the listeners of your podcast. I want them to understand that really, truly take those moments every day. You have moments of joy that come into your life. They're small, these Kodak moments. Really sit with them, really enjoy them, be in the moment, be present to it. And believe me when I tell you, that alone will bring you what you're searching for.
I mean, now that we're in love with Sylvia, you can listen to her podcast. You have a podcast, Release Doubt, Reveal Purpose. So you want more of Sylvia in your life. That's where you can get it. Tell everybody what day and how often the podcast comes out.
It comes out weekly. It's on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It depends on whether I have an interview or not. If I have an interview, the interviews get released on Tuesdays. And if I'm coaching, it'll usually be on a Thursday.
Okay, good. And what is the best way that people can connect with you?
My website, actually. So it's www.sylviaworsham.com.
Okay, perfect. Right there on your screen. It'll be in the notes, all that fun stuff. What do you love most about your life right now?
I love pickleball right now.
Oh, never done it.
Well, try it, guy, because
Okay.
it's really pretty fun. And I get to do it most days to really relieve the stress and just bring a little bit of more joy in my life, especially when my life got very stressful last year when my dad passed away. I would do it purposely to keep some joy in there.
I love that. Usually the answers, I ask everybody that question, and so many of them are like my family, my freedom, and I love the answer of pickleball. That might be my favorite answer. That's fantastic. I can't thank you enough for being here and for sharing your story, your wisdom, for helping so many people. I appreciate it so much.
No, I appreciate your time, and I thoroughly enjoyed listening to your first guest. I will definitely buy her book. It sounds amazing. I can't wait to dig into it.
Well, I thank you. Go get Sylvia's books, go listen to the podcast, go coach with her, all the good things. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now let's see if I can get you out of here seamlessly. Okay, we did it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Go make your day richer. Go make somebody else's day richer. You've made mine by watching this show, and I love you for it. I thank my guests today. We'll see you tomorrow with an all-new episode. Bye-bye, everyone.